You are listening to the sounds of the Right On Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of On the Record Jams, brought to you by the Right On Network. I'm AJ and along with me is Arthur. Hello, Arthur. Well, okay, and I'm glad that I'm glad that you're doing this. This is something where, like, I've thought about this for a long time with some of the conversations we've had. I'm like, you know what? We need to record this. And I'm happy that you're along for the ride because you're a good explainer. That's basically one of the things going on at the Right On Network is I'll have this idea, and I'll try to find someone who's smarter than me, and I'm like, okay, let's pull this off. On the Record Jams. So, and returning back to Marvin Gaye, that is what the young people would call a W. So why wouldn't we, right? Why wouldn't we do it? All right. So, do you want to start off with Marvin Gaye or? Yeah, first 21st century entry as well. Yeah. Yeah, it's old. That's why I had to throw that 21st century in there thing. So we're both right on that. So you're bringing Marvin Gaye. Which particular song are you adding on the record, Arthur? I can hear the songwriting in it. That's what I really enjoyed about this because this is a full production. It's a lot of instrumentation going on. So the first couple of listens, I was caught up in the ethereal feel of it. And then when I was like, okay, but now I want to break this down mechanically, the songwriting in it is phenomenal. And that's why I try to look for maybe a demo version or a live take of it. Couldn't find anything, but I was just like, yeah, the songwriting in this is phenomenal. Wow. Yes. Wow, that is haunting. I would like to know how this song was constructed and put together because it's two things going on. This definitely sounds like music for the Roomers, Roomers, where you live in an apartment building and you're playing the record, the doors open and other roomers can hear it and all this stuff, and it's like, oh, they got that new Marvin Gaye record, and we can hear it blasting. So you're like, you kind of dancing to it and all that, but when you stop and listen to the lyrics, you're like, whoa, man, this is deep, this is heavy. This is I remember a friend Mark, someone asked him, hey, how come you're not married? He said, because I believe in it. It sounds like what you're describing here, where you would think someone like Marvin Gaye is like, okay, well, I guess we're splitting, then I can go on to the next one. Like you're saying, hey, he's like in between marriages right now. But he's saying like, hey, this is some real stuff. We said vows before God and family. We signed legal documents. And even if we don't belong together, the union is still pretty strong, and breaking apart, it's still going to be some chasing my damage going on. So this is going to be just a clean break. I really would just like to know, like, I should have researched it myself, like as far as like in the studio, the musicians, the ideas being thrown around here, because this one song is an album itself. That's what always blows my mind, where like, how many songs is on this album? 9, 12, how many? Because this is a lot itself. Now, just playing it in the background and being okay with it, like, yeah, but I'm talking about when you're really trying to sit and listen, because this is the vinyl record album era where you can't skip songs conveniently, so you will be sitting down listening. And I'm just saying, this is a lot just for one record. Oh, okay. Yep. Is he also doing the background vocals? All right, yeah. I loved all of it. A lot of leading man energy in this song. Yeah. with milk. This is some deep stuff, Arthur. We got a divorce concept album here.
He's already with some other lady. By the time this album comes out, he's already married to her, and they've long had kids. So
In between marriages.
in between marriages, and it's like, okay, well, look, he hadn't totally. It's not like he had to come out with some of this stuff, but it's not like things were as tabloid as they are now. So these things weren't 100% known at the time that this album came out. So he really just kind of jumped off and told everybody, hey, just in case you're not sure, this is what's actually going on with me.
I was going to say that, like what you were explaining, all this, and I'm being an artist. Wow. Yeah. So is it a couple of years after this with the national anthem?
The national anthem, what was that? Like 82, 83. So
So it's
yeah,
not that, it's not that far.
not
Wow.
that far off. He really only made two more albums while he was alive. So Here My Dear is, I mean, it's his last double album, truly. And then the album he made after this, he did the thing that I think we talk about Kanye West doing this a lot, but other artists have done it too. I know Beatles have a lot of stories like this too, where they may start one album and change their mind and turn it to another album.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, like Here My Dear wasn't well received because people are like, where are the jams at, dude? Like you just his song before this was Got to Give It Up. He put Got to Give It Up out as a part of a live album. And then he had a studio song that he put out to be a hit as a part of the live album, which was really common back then. And so he gave people Got to Give It Up. like this reluctant to dance, but I'm going to go ahead and dance, y'all, because this lady is here and I got to dance. Like he made that song, which is again is super personal if you know anything about what people say about Marvin, how shy he was and the type of person he was. So even his jam was a confessional. So he put that out. The second wife and his brother are singing background on "Got to Give It Up," so that's it's just wild stuff. And he does that. He puts out "Here, My Dear." People are like, "Dude, where's the jams?" So he goes back and says, "Oh, y'all want jams? I got jams." And he was gonna make this album called "Love Man." And at the time, this is when Rick James was starting to become a bigger deal. So he
Okay.
made this like Rick James karaoke album. And he worked on it and worked on it and tweaked it. And then he changed his mind and said, man, I don't like this. Man, I need to say something. I got to put some more stuff in there. And then again, you'll notice the Kanye tie-in. He almost completely flipped it and turned the album into what could almost be classified as a gospel album.
Wow.
And so he started working on it and reworking the lyrics. Like the music was the same. So there were still jams, there were still disco tunes, but he's like changing the lyrics around. And he gets in the middle of that. He's stopping and starting drugs. Of course, he's breaking up with the second wife already, changing, moving towns, being broke, doing all the Marvin Gaye stuff that people know about Marvin Gaye. Well, he stopped working on the album, and Motown was very upset with him. And they eventually went into the studio, stole the master recordings essentially, and finished the album for him and put it out. And he really didn't appreciate that, and he vowed to never record with Motown again, and he didn't. Because Sexual Healing was the album after. So it's Here, My Dear, 78. And then the album I'm talking about that got stolen was called In Our Lifetime. And he was very upset that they put it out. And also the album title was supposed to have a question mark, like in our lifetime. Like, is all this crazy stuff going to happen in our lifetime? Because he was worried about pollution still. He was worried about all these different things that he talked about on What's Going On, like
What's
almost a
going on?
decade earlier. And he's like, hey, in our lifetime, like, what's going to happen? And he wanted it to be a question mark, and they left the question mark off. He was even mad about that. So once he left, the only album he got to record before he got shot by his dad and died was Midnight Love. So that's on a different label. That's the one with Sexual Healing and all that on there. Turn on Some Music as well, which we know that's the one that got sampled, Eric Sermon. So that was on his last album. But this was, he only did those two albums, In Our Lifetime and Midnight Love after Here, My Dear.
So Marvin Gaye, he played the keys, right?
I know he played,
Piano,
I know,
organ.
I know he did have some piano talent. I don't know if he played on this specific song, but I could believe that he did because again, there was so much just working it out, going back and forth. Could you like looking at some of the lyrics, listening to this song, could you imagine somebody sitting down and writing that down? Like, I don't think so. Because in some
And
cases
there's
things
tempo
aren't even rhyming.
changes.
Yeah, and there's tempo
Yeah.
changes.
Well, as far as like, I wonder if there were any punch-ins or was he a one-take Charlie? Because this song is going through so many avenues as far as like his vocal delivery. So I don't think a lesser vocalist could have pulled this off because the music is busy. I mean that in a positive way. It's all over the place. The theme is, and I'm just saying like, for him to have control of that ship the whole time, that's where I'm getting the main character energy from, Marvin Gaye.
Right. But I don't think, no, he punched in a lot because that was a
Okay.
story. That was a story
I
with
would
Marvin.
imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, I would imagine with this.
Yeah, because punching in became a thing. Of course, in the early 70s, punching in was such a thing with Marvin that the people in the studio would get tired of him because punching in is more work for everybody in the studio, right? Because now you have to cut those tapes, you got to get those takes spliced together. You got to like the technical piece of a punch in means everybody in the studio, if they already weren't going home at a decent time, they're really not going home at a decent time now. and all the stories that we get of artists showing up, not showing up, getting to the studio at weird times, wanting to record at 3 o'clock in the morning when everybody's tired. Like all that stuff, you can imagine a guy in Marvin Gaye's situation. He was doing all of that, and he was doing a bunch of punch ins. So the story goes that for 1973 and Let's Get It On, I mean, the story is that him and his first wife were basically already broken up in the late 60s. And so Let's Get It On is, for the most part, not about Anna Gordy. I mean, it's just Marvin. Some of it is about Jan, the second wife, but he met the wife during that time, and she came up to the studio. And the story goes is that she was there watching him sing. And the guys in the engineering booth, like everybody at the studio was making fun at him, making fun of him for doing all these punch ins. And so he gets mad because they're making him look bad in front of his little new love interest. And so he says, okay, if you've heard the Let's Get It On album, there's the Let's Get It On song, but there's also the reprise. Like it's almost basically what a remix is now. It's the same music, but the lyrics are different. The story goes is that he got so mad about them making fun of him is that he said, okay, you guys think I can't sing anymore? You think I can't sing without punch-ins? Run back, Let's Get It On. And we're going to do a reprise. And we're going to do it all in one take. And the story goes, he took his shirt off and did the whole thing in one take. So if you've ever heard that song, he did the whole thing in one take, but that wasn't normal for him by then at all. But he did it kind of, I'm going to use flex again. He did it as a flex, like, let me show my love interest how good of a singer I am and how much she needs to ignore these guys in the studio making fun of me about punching in because I'm Marvin Gaye, doggone it, and I can still sing. So check this out. But no, for this stuff by this time, I'm assuming Jan wasn't there for this, and he probably had a shirt on, and he probably was punching in like crazy whenever he got a chance because of all the vocal layering.
The analog days, yeah. The analog days. Hey, the production on this, wonderful. This is a good record. This is a great record, Arthur. The production on this is out of this world.
I agree. You think about it now when you find out these albums, these fascinating, great albums that just get panned at the time because it wasn't what people let expectations ruin the art, right? Like they decide that they want a specific thing from a certain artist. And if an artist's life is going in a different direction, they might give them something else. And again, I keep asking, like, when do we learn? When do we learn to not try to force these people into doing what we want them to do? Like, if that was the case, we would have gotten robbed out of so much great music, so much great art if we didn't let these people do what they need to do. I know you've used that phrase at a time too. Like, if you get a long album from an artist and you don't like every song, like, hey, maybe some of those other songs, it led to the songs that you love the most. Like, let them do their thing so that they can give you the best of what they have.
I think the trend now is the whole, let's give them their flowers while they're with us. So hopefully we'll see more of that.
Yeah, and it seems like that's still happening after the fact, right? Like, I think we're fortunate that, we talk about all the drugs and the death and the turmoil that some of these artists and famous people go through, but we're fortunate. You think about our rappers in a lot of cases, these guys get to be our age and older, and their big famous run may have been in their mid-20s or low 30s, and then they just kind of duck off for a while. And I think that absence make the heart grow fonder thing kind of kicks in. And I think that's where the flowers thing, I think some of these people get more of a chance to get their flowers because they kind of go away for a while. And then people say, I wonder what happened to old such and such. And then such and such is like, hey guys, I'm here. I'm not making any music because it's not lucrative. And I ran out of stuff to say and I didn't care. I didn't know y'all wanted me anymore. And people say, yeah, please come back. That'll be awesome. And then we get to see these people come back and they make these albums. They get their budgets together. They get all the old band together, like the Expendables or whatever. And therefore, we get all these records from these people who we thought, maybe they're off somewhere raising grandchildren and, going to football games or whatever. And who knew they want to still show up and rap.
Yeah. Having stock in Silicon Valley and such.
Right.
Well, hey, Arthur, why don't we do this? Why don't we take it to a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about what I am going to put on the record on On the Record Jams, Episode 3, brought to you by the Right On Network.
Jeff and Merc present Unpacking the Power of Power Pack,
where we journey through each issue of the most underrated Marvel series of the 80s while drinking beer.
analyzing awesome and amazing adolescent adventures, and absorbing alcohol.
We got kids with powers, we got villains with attitude.
We got superhero guests, like all of them from the Marvel Universe.
We have thematically appropriate beer reviews.
We have good jokes and bad song parodies.
One stop for all your Power Pack pod-pleasing procurements.
And we got alliteration.
Find Unpacking the Power of Power Pack wherever fine podcasts are played.
Costumes on.
Welcome back to On the Record Jams, brought to you by the Right On Network. This is Episode 3. I'm AJ. Along with me is Arthur, and what I'm adding to the record is Strange Ways on the Madvillain album with Madlib, the producer, and Metal Fingers Doom, also known as MF Doom. This is Madlib. This is a super group, if you will. This came out in 2004. Arthur, I thought it came out later. This came out in 2004, Arthur.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that, how Doom's run, when it starts, when it restarts, right? Because he had a prior group, his brother passed away, and then he came back essentially as MF Doom. And then we get this great run of just top shelf music all over the place that he put out. And again, it was really counterculture, really the type of thing that nobody was rewarded for doing, because even the people who were doing that same type of music, they were kind of trying to find their way. Like, do I keep doing what I'm doing, or do I pivot? Do I have to get a song with Pharrell? Do I have to get Timbaland? Do I have to do a thing where, hey, I'm from California, but I'm gonna do a song with somebody from New York? Yay, look at me. I can travel. I can send an email. And like, those artists were going through that, and Doom is like, nope, comic book references. I'm MF Doom. Here's these super loaded raps where you may not get it until the 10th time you hear it, and it's great. And I'm sampling weird stuff, weird time signatures, and we're doing it. And he found like somebody that was in on that with him to get Otis with him, with Madlib, and it's just good times all over the place. People love this record, and rightfully so.
So, Arthur, you mentioned at the top of the show that this is our first hip-hop entry. Do you remember, like, your entry into hip-hop, or how hip-hop was presented to you as a kid?
Well, I'm of the age where, if you think about, let's say, late 80s, hip-hop wasn't introduced to me. It was kind of shunned away from me. So my parents were like, don't you listen to that evil Too Short or that crazy LL Cool J. You don't want any of that. You better get away from that and keep listening to this Freddie Jackson and Luther Vandross we got for you. Maybe some Barry White. We'll let you listen to that. We'll let you listen to Love Serenade, where he says, take it off. Like, we'll let you listen to that if you don't listen to this rap music, right? And I don't think they were doing it on purpose. I think they just didn't know. So of course, if you tell a 10-year-old, or whatever age I was around that time, late 80s, you tell them don't listen to something, their mission in life is going to be to figure out how to listen to it, right? And so that was my entry point into hip hop, mid 80s, late 80s. Turn on the TV. When did we get Yo MTV Raps? Like, that's like cable TV. That's what got me. Our radio stations locally started playing some things, local stuff, New York stuff. And so like, it just kind of bled into me because I listened to just enough radio, watched just enough MTV. And then before you knew it, hip hop was a part of my life and everything that I was listening to.
Yeah. I remember when I was 3 months old, someone crashed into our house. So my brother and I, we shared a room for years. And he's 5 years older than me, so I basically would just listen to whatever he was listening to. And then, like, on my own time, I would listen to The Monkees because I liked the TV show. So hip-hop, I think it was a part of my life for a long time. Like, from my point of view, I thought Run DMC, they were the first rappers ever, right?
Right.
And then once we got to junior high, like in the early 90s, I think I kind of went away from it. I started discovering other type of music. And then when we started getting into the mid 90s, that's when I discovered the Wu-Tang Clan and just the sensibilities of it. It got me back into hip hop, and it started, I guess that was my formative years for, hey, these type of sensibilities is probably what's going to attract you going into the future. Whereas like non sequitur rhymes, punchlines, referring to pop culture, and rinse and repeat over weird, kind of quirky, esoteric beats. So then we start getting towards the late 90s, and times are changing. Things are turning. So when we get to those early 2000s, like you were mentioning, hey, what are we going to do? Where's rap going to go? And they were actually, I don't know how I can describe this, but they did this in this one story in DC Comics. So it was this issue with Flash where they were saying, like, let's say Flash, the first time he ever entered the Speed Force. So let's say he did that in 1985. When he first does it, he's given powers to all the people who's ever had powers before him and after. And so everything is leading up or coming from St. Barry Allen, okay? So to me, I feel like hip hop, it begins and it all leads to this moment. And I feel like 1998 to like 2004 is like the zenith. And then it all led to that era. And then everything going forward is being born out of it, right? So like we're going to continue what it was doing, or we're veering away from that. But this is the source material. So I don't know who introduced it to us as far as MF Doom, you, me, or our mutual friend Kevin. But it was kind of like, oh, like there's someone else doing this again. Like just random non sequitur rhymes, punchlines referring to pop culture. Like you said, like comic book references and comic book samples. So, he's MF Doom. Is kind of a takeoff, Victor Vaughn from Fantastic Four, all right? Dr. Doom is that whole take. Maybe some character that's disfigured and reborn, just like MF Doom. He had a career in the 90s, and now he's reborn in the early 2000s trying to go forward. So we got Madlib. He's from California. We have this citizen of dual citizenship, British and American citizenship with MF Doom, Daniel DeMille Thompson. And he, I remember when this album came out, I don't think I paid attention to this song much. I think my mind was on other songs on there. And then I guess one day I heard this and I went, whoa, wait a minute. He's not just saying crazy lyrics and putting them together. This is like one big idea. And I don't remember when I noticed that. So I'm putting on the record Strange Ways. This is off the Madvillain album. It came out in 2004. So you got to think this is the height of the Iraqi war, right? But is this song a classic? I don't care. Is the song timeless? Oh, absolutely. So it goes, wreak havoc, beep, beep, it's mad traffic, sleek and lavish people speaking, leaking to the maverick. He sees us as just another felony drug arrest. Any day could be the one he picked the wrong thug to test. Slug through the vest, shot in the street for pulling heat on a father whose babies gotta eat. And when they get hungry, ain't funny, paid to interfere with how a brother get his money. Now who's the real thugs, killers, and gangsters? Set the revolution, let the things bust and thank us. When the smoke is clear, you can see the sky again. There will be the chopped off heads of Leviathan. My friend, they call them strangers. Anybody that talk to them will end up in some danger. Can't reform them. Here's the second verse. They pray 4 times a day, they pray 5. Who weighs the strange when it's time to survive? Some will go of their own free will to die. Others take them with you when they blow sky high. What's the difference? All you get is lost children while the bosses sit up behind the desks. It costs billions to blast humans in half, into calves and arms. Only one side is allowed to have bombs. It's like making a soldier drop his weapon, shooting him, and tell him to get to stepping. Obviously, they came to portion up his fortune. Sounds like to me that old robbery extortion. Same game, strange ways. You can't reform them. This is some wild stuff, Arthur.
Yeah, it's concise, but it's so dense. Like you look at the lyrics, you listen to the song, and like you said, you could be just caught up in the aesthetic of the music. And, sometimes we talk about this, like we like when people make this kind of music because of the sound, because of the idea that it was a rebellious thing to say, hey, I'm not going to get on a song with Bone Thugs just so you could feel like I care about some place other than where I grew up at. Or, hey, I'm trying to have these hits. I'm over here yodeling, singing in the middle of the song. Not to say that I hate all singing on rappers, but it's like when you get into the concept of, hey, I'm over here rapping. And sometimes you could just get, especially now too, we talk about this a lot, but it's like, if you just show up rapping over some kind of weird beats, in some cases, it doesn't even matter what you say because people like the sound. But Doom didn't take the easy way out. He took a stance and he had two very big topics in a concise, heavy way. So you're right. This is a crazy chance for him to take, considering he was already taking a big risk to try to be, depending on who you ask, you could almost consider him like a one-man Wu-Tang.
Right.
And this is after Wu-Tang was in their prime, because Wu-Tang, like we talk about a lot in our conversations, Wu-Tang had already kind of blown their lead, kind of had squandered their opportunity because they didn't want to play the business game. They were too busy
being weird,
trying to figure out what they wanted for themselves. Yeah, they were being weird, but they were trying to figure out what they wanted for themselves. And the age-old issue. You got 10 people in a room trying to make decisions about what you're going to do. That's hard to figure out. But not only could Doom figure that out for himself, he had a chance to go work with somebody that we now view as an amazing producer, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Otis, and getting Madlib and doing this super group thing. And then they take advantage of that and put out this type of song, which is amazingly topical. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Who's making the rules here? Are we sure we got this all right here? Are we rolling with the narrative that we've been told, or are we asking some more questions about what's going on around us? That's heavy.
And the brilliance with this is you can take this song and you can slide it down the time scale to the Harlem Renaissance. You can slide this down to the time scale of what's going on in today's climate, as far as some of the war things going on in certain regions of the globe. You can slide this anywhere and this song is going to make sense. It doesn't matter what genre of music that you're into. Right. And I love the production on this because it's chaotic and melodic at the same time.
Right, which is they were both great at doing this then and now, especially for Otis, some of the high-profile work he's gotten to do over the years here recently. But yeah, it's such a match made in a good place, if you believe in heaven, it's that, to have Madlib and Doom together during this time, which you could consider at least their primes for both of them to be able to come together and do this. And again, to not take the easy way out and hit hard topics. Because even during this time, they could have gotten away with just saying, hey, here's our aesthetic. It doesn't really matter what we're saying. We're cracking jokes. We're saying things. We get the pop culture references. I'm here with a comic book mask on, calling myself MF Doom. Yeah, and we're doing this. And we got clips from comic books, clips from all these different things that you think about it now. I know we joke about this a lot, but it's like, man, how did they get this stuff cleared? Or did they even get it cleared? Or is somebody going to come out of nowhere and 10 years from now and try to get at these guys for what they did? But my hope is that, it'll be fine, because I think it worked out really well for Wu-Tang too, like considering all of the references they provided and took and did. And for all we know, they didn't have too many issues.
People have gotten smarter. So back during this time, this is when, I was ringing the bell on this saying like, hey, this is something that MF Doom and others, they figured out, is that, hey, you know what? I don't need to sell to the masses, because now we are in we're knee deep in collector's culture. All right. Like our mutual friend Kevin, he just showed us something. It was a Transformer thing with Soundwave. It was this cassette player, and it seemed pretty intricate, right? And a product of quality. You don't need to sell 5 million of them things. You just need to sell 8,000 of them for what, $120, and bam, you're good. And I feel like that's what MF Doom with the niche or niche, or however you want to pronounce it, niche market of, hey, you know what? I could be a global sensation, but that's always risky because I could be, as Chris Rock would say, here today, gone today. Or I have a loyal following, and no matter where the trends go, no matter what, they're just always with me. So sometimes I might sell them a box set or a collector's item or repackage something. And as long as I have that faithful, 800,000 or more, boom. And that's where we get the Griselda movement and West Side Gun, where they're not trying to appeal to everybody. I'm not saying that they don't make appealing music, but it's like, hey, they found their audience. The audience is just going to ride or die with them, and they're just going to ride that into the sunset. And also, this song, guys, I think it's less than 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and Arthur used the right term. It's dense, lyrically and production-wise. And this starts a movement. Now, in this, he has 2 verses. It's still like under 2 minutes. But a lot of MF Doom songs, it's like one big good verse, I'm out. And you don't feel cheated. And we see that again, with Griselda and some other members where, man, I gave you this wild one verse, nonsense, melodic, non sequitur. I got some bars in here that'll make you think and chew on some stuff, and I'm out. And I think MF Doom, he gave people a roadmap to play with.
Yep, he really did. And, I have to bring up my guy, Rock Marciano, is, the aftermath of this. Like one of the, I don't know if you want to call him a benefactor. I don't want to get a weird knock at my door and there's people with Rock Marciano coming to get me or anything. But it's like that approach to music, just like some people are built to do the stadium stuff. Some people are built to do this dense, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't type of music. And if you give it a chance, you're going to realize that what they're doing is pretty doggone special. I mean, that's where Doom is at. I think he's coming after the Wu-Tang and, again, being more efficient, having less people involved, being able to kind of do his own thing, turn it on and off whenever he wants to, and live his life outside of the rap universe. And like you say, you're trying to sell 1,000 of something, maybe 5,000 or 6,000. You're not trying to sell 1 million of anything because you don't need to, the way your business model is set up. Rock Marciano is, in this era, in the last decade, he's kind of like the heavyweight champion of that. And he's doing the same thing. He's doing this confessional, sneaky, dense stuff where, again, if you like the aesthetic, you like the vocal sample and the guy still rapping even over the vocal sample and all that stuff, like he's doing all of that. But then you take a listen to those words and there's a lot happening in those words. There's a lot of, these guys are, Marciano is literally our age, mid 40s and beyond. And like he's earned some of his opinions. He's earned some of his stripes and he's willing to talk about it openly. And then, he wants you to pay $40 for a t-shirt and he wants you to buy that album when it comes out and it's not going on streaming for a month. If you want it a month before, you got to pay the price for it. And if not, you wait and you get it a month later. But, could you still please go in there and buy that t-shirt so I don't have to do a song with Megan Thee Stallion?
Okay, wait. No. Okay, so the Jizza, he says, make it brief, son. Half short, twice strong. That's what's going on in this. They pray 4 times a day. They pray 5. Who ways is strange when it's time to survive? Just that alone, I got to walk away. Okay? I'm pretty sure.
Right. That's a hook.
That's a hook. Look, just like I remember, we might talk about it in the future, but like when we were growing up, there was a lot of, hey, you should listen to this, you should listen to that, you should listen to this. So like I always heard about Bob Dylan growing up, but maybe like when I was 22 years old, I put on a Bob Dylan song, and it was so dense, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna revisit this, and like 11 years later, I revisited Bob Dylan. But yeah, this is some strong stuff. No pun intended because of what the song is talking about, but this is just a loaded bar itself. Only one side is allowed to have bombs. That's some wild stuff.
And then he goes on to further explain it.
Oh, okay. He has two of those where like, hey, let me stop. Let me stop the the flow of this to give you a simile, right? Like, let me make a reference. Yep. It's like making a soldier drop his weapon, shooting him, and telling him to get to stepping.
Right. And it's just if your brain turns on at the exact right time where he's laying this out for you. And again, you might have to hear it multiple times before it really hits you that he's making a point. And it's a real heavy point that is not just the music is counterculture. It's not just the counterculture. Like the content is counterculture at times as well. And it's like that. This is a bunch of that, and this is a great example of it. And like you say, it doesn't matter if it's the number one song when you search for MF Doom on your whatever search device you use. And but it gets the point across of exactly the type of artist Doom was. And it was to our benefit to have had him be willing to, again, I use the phrase sacrifice when I talk about artists a lot, like sacrificing the potential to try to be famous, because a lot of people go into the music industry to be rich and or famous, and you're not going to be super famous making this type of music at this period of time, like at all. I don't see Christina Aguilera anywhere on these song notes to say that she like she did a little singing part on there or something. Like there was none of that. It's just hard rap and chaotic beats. Like in a post Wu-Tang world, somebody basically doing a Wu-Tang tribute act. And it's just, but with its own special thing. So it's not total robbery. It's just, it's homage. It's appreciation. It's trying to carry that forward and put that type of music out into the world. Like whether it was just what he wanted to do or whether he just felt the need or whether he just felt inspired. Because I always think about that Wu-Tang story. We keep bringing those guys up. I do think they're really important to the future of rap music and the guys we're talking about. Like you don't have to take the normal path that you see people taking. Like you could do a different thing with your music. And I think about Wu-Tang, I think about RZA, I think about GZA, I think about how they started. And then they did the kind of disappear and come back with a whole new thing deal. And I know me, when I got into Wu-Tang, that's what blew my mind. I remember going to the record store. I was waiting for Liquid Swords. I think I've told you this story before. Like I was waiting for Liquid Swords, and this was a little bit before internet was very common. So I didn't have anywhere to go to complain, like people do online now and say, when is this gonna drop? Where's this thing at? I've heard the one song, but where's the album? Like I was just doing all of that isolated to myself. Or just trying to ask anybody that I thought might have listened to Wu-Tang, like, do you know when Liquid Swords is coming out? And everybody had a different story about when they thought it would be. So I just kept going to the record store, like trying to find GZA. Like, where's the next? It's his first album, right? And then I find that first Genius album, and I'm thinking I have Liquid Swords in my hand. And then I start looking, and I'm like, oh no, this isn't Liquid Swords. What is this? And this is during the era where you could just, like if it was a CD, they would literally let you listen to it. And so I'm sitting in the record store listening to the GZA's real first album. And this is with, the first few Wu-Tang albums already being out. So I'm hearing this, and this is not Wu-Tang stuff at all. And I'm like, wow. So that didn't make me mad. It made me appreciate the pivot even more, because I'm like, those guys looked at what they were doing and said, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to play the game this way. I'm going to play it the way I want to play it. And me and my 10-man team, we're going to do this. And we're gonna pull this off in a way that people aren't going to see coming. These record deal issues, the thing where you got this one group, but there's multiple artists and they all have these different label deals with different labels. Some of that comes from the P-Funk universe, but doing that in a hip hop thing, like now that's just whatever. Like everybody does that now that tries to get their stuff together. When they have groups and they try to get as much money from as different people as possible. I mean, you talk about Griselda, they're doing the same thing.
Correct.
They sign different deals with different people.
So you have Ghostface Killah in the early 90s. He's wearing the mask to disguise his face for, whatever reason. And then we have MF Doom, where he's reborn. And I think, the audience didn't know who he was at first, right? Because he would wear the mask. And then later it was discovered like, oh, wait a minute. This is the guy from, was it Organized Confusion? Also with some ties with Third Base. They're like, oh, okay. Sorry, I'm throwing out.
Was he in before?
Throwing out some fake news there. But this is powerful stuff. It goes, some will go of their own free will to die. Others take them with you when they blow sky high. What's the difference? All you get is lost children. Well, I mean, I think when you listen to this album, you're not expecting to hear this. So again, like it's very deliberate. It's very sober and focused, what he's doing. There's 2 verses on this. One more zoomed in urban street tale where, a father who's dealing with a baby who has to eat and is willing to kill for it. And then you got a situation where it's, I don't know, maybe a concerted war effort to, blow people sky high. So, yeah, MF Doom, he did his thing with this. Now, were Madlib and MF Doom, were they sending emails back and forth to each other, or were they in the same space, Arthur?
That I don't know, because this would have been the era where you could have I sent you the track and then you sent it back and it was crazy. You remember that era where everybody was saying, how did you work with such and such? And
like, I never met him.
Over to him. Yeah, I never met him. I sent it over. He sent it back. It was crazy. And then we put it out. And it's like, okay, great. Oh, to clear that up too, it was KMD. That was the name of the group.
Oh, I'm sorry, KMD.
It was the first group was KMD. That's what it was. I knew it was something like that. I just couldn't remember exactly, so I went and looked it up.
Thanks, Arthur. If this was we were sending emails back and forth, wow. Because this definitely there had to be some phone calls too, or it's just, that's how great these artists are. That's how great of a producer, where it's like, I will make sure you sound great on this. Because also MF Doom, he's switching up rhyme schemes nonstop through this song. Like, it's a battle going on in this song, guys. You got to hear this. And it's under 2 minutes. It won't take up any of your time. And that's why that's why I'm excited about for On the Record, because at the Right On Network, we do movies, TV shows, comics. So like with the TV, you got to stop and watch it. With the comic book, you got to stop and read it. You can't. But with music, you can listen to this on a walk to the mailbox while driving and folding clothes. So that's why it's like, hey, you guys can see in the title what we're talking about or in the show notes, and then boom, listen to us give an analysis, and we would love to hear your feedback about these songs. Final thoughts about Strange Ways on the Madvillain album, Arthur.
Yeah, to cover up one of the things you talked about, there's pictures online of Madlib showing his setup when he produced a couple of songs in a hotel room. Because you also think about this too, some of those artists that were really a lot of the artists, but some of the more under the radar artists, a lot of what they did to stay afloat is they did a lot of shows. So they were doing a lot of traveling, a lot of overseas stuff. And but they still had to create music, right? So they have their equipment. In most cases, you're not talking about super expensive or even the best equipment to have sometimes. They just have what they have. And they're making beats on it, and they're figuring it out, and they're getting it recorded. And at least in the early 2000s, you're at the point where pretty much everybody had some kind of desktop to save the files, but maybe you didn't have a big hard drive. Maybe you're dealing with a computer that could die on you out of nowhere and you lose everything. You're not talking about people making stuff on their phones. Like there's a good story out about when Madlib worked with Freddie Gibbs, a lot of those beats he made on his iPhone, allegedly.
Wow.
And if you've heard those I mean, you're talking Bandana and those two albums that he made with Freddie. I mean, those are some great, great, great beats. So if he did that on his phone, I mean, that tells you a lot about how things changed from 2004 to somewhere in the last 10 years when those beats got made. But as far as my thoughts on this, I really like the idea that they even pulled it off and got it together. I think we went through a period of time, and we still do now, where people come up with these ideas to create music. And it's this super group thing, and such is going to work with such, and it's going to be awesome, and it's coming out next spring, and then it never happens. And this Madvillain was a case of something like that, and then it actually happened, and it was great, and people appreciated it, and we can listen to it 20 years later and still get a lot of context and information out of it. So that's a sign of success. That's a sign of talent, and again, it's a sign of just sacrifice of these great artists that produce this music that we get a chance to listen to and get a chance to audit. And ideally, I know I always talk about this and harp on this quite a bit, we don't need to make a rating for it. You don't need to rank it up against something else. You don't have to compare it to the greatest album in your head. Like, is this better than Illmatic? Like, I don't care. It's this is special stuff in its own place, and it needs to be consumed in that way and appreciated in that way. 'Cause I think we could get a lot more out of music if we quit having to rank everything and quit having to compare everything. Or somebody made 5 albums, and if something is on the 4th best album that they made, you act like it's not good. And it's like, well, there's a bunch of great artists that have made a bunch of great music, and maybe their 4th best album isn't the greatest album in the world, but there's probably 3 or 4 songs on there where you can hear it. You can hear the greatness. You can hear that they really knocked something out of the park. But if you're too busy doing ratings and rankings, you might rob yourself from the opportunity to, really take that music in and enjoy it the way you should.
Ditto. I agree with that. And when you're waiting for the next big thing, you could also be robbing yourself of those great things that have been happening right in front of you.
Exactly.
So, Arthur, how can the folks reach us to add to the conversation where we were talking about Marvin Gaye's When Did You Stop Loving Me? When Did I Stop Loving You? And Strange Ways by Madvillain?
Well, we have On the Record Jams on X/Twitter. We have ontherecordjams@gmail.com. We also have, I think we're working on trying to get this on YouTube. And when we do that, we'll follow up with that as well. We have our Facebook page, same thing, it's On the Record. So there's a few different places where this will be available, and we'll work on getting it available in a few more places. Something else that'll make sure we mention this. AJ, you know this, you get stuck hearing about this all the time, how excited I am about when I make playlists. And I have some sort of subtext or some reason why I'm trying to make a playlist to get some point across. Well, of course, I use our show as an excuse to do the same thing. So I'm making a playlist that goes with every episode, where I'll put the songs on there that we're putting on the record, of course, but I also put some songs related to those songs. And it may not even be the artist that we're talking about per se. Maybe it's artists from the same period of time. Maybe it's something that was inspired by the music that we made, the songs that we talked about for the episode. So it's another opportunity to share with the community and have more of a discussion about, how impactful this music is and how many different ways it ends up changing history of music. I mean, whether it be other songs these same artists made, or other songs that other people got inspired and made coming out of these songs. So not trying to do too long of a playlist, because if you let me, I'll make a 6-hour playlist or a 10-hour playlist that you'll never get through. But we put some stuff together for these, so those will be coming along with the recording of the episodes as well.
We would like to hear your thoughts at ontherecordjams@gmail.com and the other places Arthur mentioned we'll put in the show notes. And I want to take time out to thank some people that made this podcast possible, and that's our Patreon subscribers. They went to patreon.com/Right On Network, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. I'm going to start off by thanking Alan Wright. He's at boldoutlaw.com. He's a Robin Hood scholar and enthusiast. He writes about Robin Hood in history and pop culture. You can also hear him at the Right On Network talking about Straight Out of the Federation, a Blake 7 podcast with me and April. We have DJ Merc, DJ MERC. Check out his music on Apple Music. He is the sound of the Right On Network. Tim Price, the pod crasher himself. He's on the Right On Network talking about The Outcasters. That is a Batman and the Outsiders podcast. Mike W. Barr, Jim Aparo, Adrian Roy, some DC comics in the 1980s. Friend of the Right On Network, Cluck Trent, as well as friend on the Right On Network, Ken Fedekowski. We have Mark Blair and Laurel Phillips. You can hear them on Feathers and Foes, a Birds of Prey podcast. We have Paul Hicks over in Australia. Hello, Paul. He listened to one of our episodes. He said that we gave him some good insight about Sexy Sadie. Paul Hicks, he's in Australia. He's a friend of the Right On Network. And listen to his podcasts, DCOCD, The Gary Show, Dow Leffer Flanger, and one of my favorite podcasts, Waiting for Doom. It is a Doom Patrol podcast, Waiting for Doom. And we have over at the Fire and Water Network, The Irredeemable Shag. He does things like JSA Presents, Just Society of America in the 1990s, Who's Who Revisited, and even though they finished it, he has the Justice League International Bwahaha podcast. And some of our new Patreon subscribers, thank you guys for supporting us. We have Justin Steiner. He writes about music. He blogs about it. He does a lot of late 90s, early 2000s power, pop, rock music. You can catch him at Shoefly Pie, like Shoefly, SHOO, Shoefly Pie. Sometimes he writes to us about the Outcasters podcast. And I want to thank Rick from Rick and Jeff Presents. Thanks a lot, Rick and Jeff. Rick and Jeff Presents. Listen to their podcast. Guys, thank you for being Patreon subscribers. If you want to join the list and we can shout you out, just go to patreon.com/Right On Network. So until next time, it's been Arthur and AJ. Bye-bye, everyone. Keep jamming.
Please.
Boom. Bam. Yeah, we did that one.